Hi, Bob Gruen here for Boomerocity.com. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about Blondie and Debbie Harry in particular. I remember when Lisa Robinson called me up and asked me to go and take pictures of a band called the Stilettos, saying that the singer was one of the most beautiful girls she had seen. And I remember walking in and seeing Debbie for the first time and being absolutely floored. I had to agree with Lisa. Debbie is one of the most beautiful women. But beyond that, she was a great singer. She had great style. She had a great smile. She had great personality and connected with the audience. And I think the Stilettos was the first band I ever saw at CBGB's a few months later. And then the members of Stilettos kind of rearranged and they formed the band Blondie. And Blondie was great and started playing in Max's Kansas City a lot. Remember one night when Debbie played there, she was wearing a tiger striped dress. And I took some great pictures of her. That's a picture I'm going to post this month. Debbie actually says in her book how she just found a piece of cloth, I think it was like a curtain or furniture cover cloth or something like that, and she turned it into a really great dress. Debbie was very imaginative, very fashion forward. Every week they would come out, or every month when they played at CBGB, she'd have different outfits. I remember one time she had a Coca-Cola logo all over her pants, and she's just very eclectic and very interesting. And then there was a tour with Iggy Pop where he was playing, and David Bowie was his piano player, which was kind of unusual because Iggy was sort of known, but David Bowie was a world star at the time. And for David to just be the background piano player, he really didn't sing or take part other than playing piano, was very unusual, and it was a newsworthy event, and they had Blondie as an opening act. So I actually went to Toronto to see the first show to get some pictures of Iggy and Bowie together, and I got some really nice pictures of Iggy and Debbie together. And Debbie later says that the opening act, that tour was what really broke them and what really exposed them to an audience outside of New York. And shortly after that, I remember being at CBGB's one night when the place was completely packed and Blondie was playing, and they started playing Heart of Glass, and I heard the sounds and I saw the audience reaction, and it was the first time at CBGB's when I thought that this music was going to be bigger than CBGB's. Most of the bands that were playing at CBGB's were very new and they weren't all that good, but Blondie was one of the first ones to get really good, and I just heard this sound that seemed to me like it was going to go around the world. It was much better than the typical kind of raunchy, startup bands that were playing at CB's. It sounded so professional and so clean, and just such a good song that just would appeal to everybody. And as they started to get more and more popular, Jimmy Destry, who wrote a lot of the songs, wanted to remind people that Blondie was a group because all the stories were about Debbie and all the pictures were of Debbie because Debbie is so beautiful. All the magazines wanted to write stories about her and put pictures of Debbie, but the band was actually a band. It wasn't just Debbie. Blondie wasn't Debbie's name. Blondie was the name of the band. So Jimmy Destry actually had a record company start a campaign of advertisements. They had buttons that said Blondie is a group. You might still find some of them around today. But it makes the point that Blondie was a group. But Debbie kind of stood out and everybody was really interested in her. And then eventually they fell prey to the difficulties of being in a rock and roll band in the 80s. The chemicals and the lifestyle just kind of caught up with them all, and like a lot of bands, they dissolved for a while. But Debbie kept going, even though Chris got a really rare disease, was in the hospital for a couple of months. Debbie took care of him that whole time. She actually was in a Broadway play that actually didn't go very well. But then she started a solo career, and she was singing for a while with the Jazz Passengers, doing kind of scat singing like the 1920s and 30s kind of style, completely different from any of the Blondie songs she had done. And that really showed how talented Debbie was and how good she was as a singer and as a performer. So she went on and had a solo career where they put out records that were called Deborah Harry to kind of change it a bit from Debbie Harry. For the Blondie thing, they called her Deborah Harry. I remember a snarky English writer who said, well, do we have to call her Deborah Harold now? I thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, Debbie's a great person, great friend. Eventually Blondie reformed the last couple of years. They've been traveling around. They've had some good records out recently. This year they're going to be back on tour again. I'm really happy to call Debbie a really close personal friend. Every year she would come to our Christmas parties. After a while she started coming early to make sure she'd get enough to eat because so many people would come that we'd run out of food. But Debbie always got there and always had a good time. And I gotta say, thank you to Debbie for, she wrote the foreword for my book, Rock Scene, my book of photographs, my monograph. And she would have written the forward for my autobiography, which just came out this year, Right Place, Right Time. But there were so many pictures of words that I wrote that we didn't have space for Debbie's forward in this book. But I just want to thank Debbie for everything she's brought to the world, and especially to us. And at 75 years old, she's still one of the most beautiful people in the world. And they're going on tour this year, so get out there and catch Blondie and enjoy them. Thanks.